What's up? Welcome in. We are back. We are out of hibernation, our summer hibernation.
Well, kind of. Partly out of the cave.
Well, you dragged me out for like an hour or two here.
I dragged you out.
Yeah. You're the one who made the schedule like a month and a half ago.
It's true. I guess.
And I was like, oh yeah, so we're back right in the middle of my vacation.
And
That's all right. We'll make it work.
The full media training camp schedule came out this morning as well.
I just saw that, yeah.
That's when you know it's like, oh, I gotta get going here.
Yeah. 2 weeks from yesterday is report day. So we're less than 2 weeks out as we record on this Wednesday morning, trying to cram in all the family time we can here before camp starts. I'm excited about this episode. We have a special one. This was by request today. But first of all, thank you for everyone being patient while we took some time off for the last few weeks. This is the dead part of the NFL calendar. Of course, John's had some paternity leave in there, also some normal vacation. We always take some time off during this part of the summer to recharge our batteries, because once the Bears report to training camp and we report to training camp, that's pretty much it until Valentine's Day.
It's one way to look at it, but yes. I never really looked at Valentine's Day as like the exit point there.
So it is now that the schedule's 17 games and the Super Bowl's basically usually the day before Valentine's Day.
I don't plan that ahead. Since the Bears never played that long. But
that's true.
Sorry. Just being real.
Yeah. Well, that's where but that's kind of how it is. But we had a bunch of people sort of, I don't know, sporadically over the last few years request this episode. And I'm excited to do it. It's basically an origin story of all the sound we've had on the episode, or on the Hoge Jahns over the years. We've always played sound. We've always tried to have fun with a lot of the sound bites we get, interviews we do. And a lot of times nowadays we play certain clips that are so old, some of our newer listeners don't even know what they're from or the context behind them. They're still funny, but what's the story behind them? So I love this. We've kind of had this plan for a couple months now to kind of do this right here in the middle of July. Nothing's going on. There's really no news to talk about. So it's the perfect time to do this. And I'm excited, Johns.
There's a lot of, you're wearing actually one of our favorite sound bites if you're watching on YouTube.
Yes, I purposely wore this today, which is Come Out Hard and Stay Hard. This one of our original t-shirts with obvious shirts, which is also a good segue because we do have some exciting news to share that I want to start this episode with as well. We are announcing our first live show in over 3 years.
Has it really been that long?
It's been that long because we have not had one since COVID.
Since your 12-4 prediction?
I don't know if that was our last one. It was 13-3, by the way.
Was it 13-3?
Yeah,
well, I tried to give you, a little more reasonable.
Yeah. I feel like we must have had one after that, but regardless, it's been a long time, and we are excited to announce that we are going to have a kickoff to training camp show the evening before, I should say, the Bears report to training camp. So Monday, July 24th, less than 2 weeks away, we will be at the Obvious Shirts store in Wrigleyville doing a live show from the store. So a couple things here. We are in the process and have been over the last month or so of sort of revamping and restocking some of our merch with Obvious Shirts. We're going to come out with some new things. We're going to make sure the popular things are including, I can't guarantee these hats. I know they're working on some newer hats, but a bunch of that stuff's going to be available in the store and also available to order here shortly. Not quite yet, but in the coming weeks. And we're kind of re-kick everything off. The season, our merchandise, everything on July 24th at the Obvious Shirt store in Wrigleyville. We'll have more details to come, but it'll be at 6 o'clock. Come out, hang out, say hi, grab some merch. It should be a fun evening, so we hope to see you there.
I better get a haircut.
Yeah. Well, that's on my agenda too in the next week. That's why I'm wearing a hat today. But it is the Hoge Jahns.
I got a great baseball summer tan going though.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it looks great. It's probably why you're wearing a hoodie.
Well, it's kind of cold today.
But yes, one of our first ever sound bites. First of all, this podcast goes back to 2015. I know we have some newer listeners. We've certainly have listeners that have been with us from the very beginning. Training camp 2015, which means we're going into our 9th season together. Started this when I was working at WGN Radio during training camp. It started with me just sort of picking off whoever I could pick off at Bourbonnais, some player interviews, some, I'd pull Johnsy. Hey, can you talk some Bears with me today? Pull John Moon Mullen, Mark Potash, Kevin Fishbane, whoever was sort of available on any given day at Olivet Nazarene University.
So little did we know we were all auditioning to be.
Well, it wasn't necessarily the plan, but yeah, it did kind of work out that way.
Yeah.
So
Plus, I live the closest to you.
Yeah. Well, I was actually going to bring that up. That was really the biggest factor. So, we could have fun with it and say like Fishbane was just terrible, and so he didn't get the gig. But that's not really
very believable.
He didn't. He didn't live 3 blocks away from me, which is really the most. No, we obviously had some chemistry right away. Johnsy lived within walking distance, so he would come over.
But I never walked.
Once a week. No, he would always drive, and we would record in the basement. And then with my radio background, I always wanted to have, sound bites, whether it was, relevant clips from practice or whatever. We wanted to make sure that we always incorporated that, but then that also allowed us to have fun, which has always been our goal here, is to give you insider information inside the building at House Hall, but also have a lot of fun along the way, especially because if you look at the history of the Chicago Bears during this podcast frame, it's been pretty bad. It's not been there's not been a lot of great football to talk about, save for really the 2018 season, which still ended very in heartbreaking fashion. But so let's go back in time a little bit into the time capsule. I think the T-shirt here is one of the first ones we should start with, because it was one of our first sound bites, courtesy of Harold Jones Quarty.
I think we gotta come out hard and stay hard.
So that's in the old Hallis Hall locker room, if I remember correctly. I was in that media scrum, and it's one of those sound bites where like, oh, that's good. We could use that with anything.
Yeah.
It's workable in print. I was with the Chicago Sun-Times at that time. And then, we were doing this podcast. And I forget the actual context, but Harold, HJQ, had become a starter for the Bears at that point. He was an undrafted free agent, very physical player, not the biggest safety, but he became a starter at some point that season.
Yeah, and this was just like, before a game, during game week.
Yes.
Talking about, what they need to do to win. And, makes sense.
I think we gotta come out hard and stay hard.
And then it became like a staple of the podcast for years, because it was in our open. And I don't know, we just played it. We played it a lot. There it is. So a Bear that probably not many Bears fans would even remember has been a huge part of this podcast over the last 8 years.
He started 4 games for the Bears in 2015 as a rookie, and then 12 in 2016, 2 interceptions in his career. I think he spent some time with the Chiefs after that. But, he was one of Ryan Pace's first waiver wire claims, where he has to join the active roster despite being an undrafted rookie. Do you remember that?
Yes. Yes, I think. I mean, I probably wouldn't have remembered off the top of my head how he got there, but yeah. And then I do remember, though, he had a huge game in Tampa. I remember writing about how he played in Tampa against the Bucs in one game. So yeah, he was a fun player. Didn't last that long with the Bears, but he lives forever on this podcast. Another guy who is probably just going to live forever, maybe actually in life too, but definitely on this podcast. John Fox, our guy.
No.
So many sound bites.
Keep going. Just keep going.
It's funny because like I have a the soundboard I have in front of me. I have like there's like different categories, and one category, most of them are like split up by year or something or whatever. There's just there's just John Fox, a whole category. And then when I go into my computer where I have a lot of other stuff saved, it's the only one that has its own folder. Just John Fox. And there's so many. Of course, some of the classics.
And Carlos Santos.
Because people forget Cairo Santos has actually been on the Bears twice. He originally was a member of the Bears early in the John Fox days, and he was on the injury report. And of course, his name is Cairo. But as John Fox is naming off the lengthy amount of injuries that they were dealing with that season, he just happened to change his name.
And Carlos Santos.
Well, those were the years where the Bears were trying to make up for their mistake of cutting Robbie Gould. Connor Barth, Roberto Aguayo.
Yes.
He came through training camp at one point in Bourbonnais. The memory.
Well, he came through and he got paid a lot of money by the Bears for 2 weeks of work because they had to claim his salary too. That one did not work out.
It was not good.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple stories we wanted to get to. One, the thing about Fox was he literally gave us one of these every week. And so it became a segment in the 3 years that he was, because this podcast started in Fox's first year. So all 3 years that John Fox was here. And it was a weekly occurrence that, he would give us something like this.
I was a math major. I wasn't actually, but
Yeah, just something like that. And there's an annoying kids song. What does the fox say? So our longtime listeners will remember this because we did a weekly thing during the season that sounded like this.
What does the fox say?
There's some unfamiliarity or infamiliarity, whatever that word is, non-familiar.
What the fox say?
Oh, it's so good.
What the fox say?
There was just so many. And I think like the whole context of what the media's relationship with John Fox became, it was friendly at first. It's Foxy. He would come talk to us on the sideline during warm-ups. He was friendly. You'd see him out and about, in Indianapolis and things. He was different than Mark Trestman. He was different than Lovie Smith. But that relationship got so contentious so quickly. It was kicking us off campus in Bourbonnais. It was eliminating some access that had been longtime staples of the Bears organization, and they haven't gone back to that since.
No.
So he changed so much about the media relationship with the team, and the team's never gone back on that in so many ways. Now they've also brought the media, or they brought training camp back to House. Also, there's been some changes there, but it got contentious. And for some time, like at some points, I thought he was just trying to be funny, or he thought he was just being smarter than us with what he was saying. But then it was just, at some point, it was ridiculous, just the back and forth between the media and him.
Yeah, and it sometimes it didn't even make sense. I have a couple. I didn't pull everything, but there's a couple I came across where there was one exchange where Rich Campbell just straight up asked him, like, what's your end goal here of just like lying about the injuries? And he just straight up said it. He's like, there's no incentive for me to give you more than the body part. And so it just and then there's another clip where he's like, I try not to be myself when I'm up here with you. Like he just started eventually by the end, just like sort of saying
he didn't care.
Yeah, he just started saying these things out loud, which is fine. But we did have one one story I wanted to bring back because it was a good one, and it involved Brian Hoyer, Alshon Jeffrey, a game played in Indianapolis at Lucas Oil Stadium, and some hot dogs in the press box.
It could have been an option. I don't know that it can be super critical. I think, when you're out there playing quarterback, it looks a little different than when you're up in a press box having hot dogs.
But as a coach, to you as a coach, does that illustrate the difference between Hoyer and Cutler?
Well, I'm not going to get into all this, as far as differences between two guys. I just think that, it would have been an option that, had we had the coolness of the hot dog laden press box, we might have gone there.
He was open from up there.
Yes. He was open. He was open from that film I just looked at too.
What have you expressed to Jay?
So in so many ways, like that exchange was just like the perfect synopsis of everything you just said and explained about the relationship.
Funny and
with John
insulting
Fox.
at the same time.
Yeah, because the reality, if I remember right, that game ended with Hoyer had a chance to hit Alshon Jeffrey wide open down the field, and he didn't see him, and he went somewhere else.
They blew a lead against the Colts, and the Colts weren't very good that year.
No,
Cam Meredith had an outstanding game. Did he not?
I think so. But the reality was it was one of those plays where like everybody up high in the press box, because you do have a better view, obviously, than when you're standing on the field with grown-ass men running at you in the pocket. It's like, oh, he's wide open. And he didn't hit it. And so that's where the questioning came from. And so you have, a fair point from Fox that it's easier to see that from the press box than when you're on the field. Sure. But you don't have to like insult the media at the same time. Like all we do up there is eat hot dogs and we don't really know what we're talking about, which is basically what he started that whole exchange with. But then by the end of it, he admits, yeah, he was wide open, and you guys were right. You saw it, and we saw it on film too, and the throw should have been made because it's the NFL, and that's your job. It's like, so the whole thing was just ridiculous, but also funny and gave us a soundbite at the same time, which was like the 3 years of John Fox in a nutshell right there.
Right. Like Brian Hoyer's job is to complete those passes. Like our job in the media is to ask the head coach and quarterback why he didn't.
Yes. So, it's just, like what Fox would say.
Yeah, I think, well done. It'd be well said.
He just had so many.
Yeah. And the reality was things
Of
weren't well
those.
said a lot, and, they weren't well done either. That's why it only lasted 3 years.
I'm not an offensive coordinator. I'm not a defensive coordinator. I'm not a special teams coordinator, but I coordinate all three.
Another classic one.
So many good ones. And then as I try to sort through all the stuff that I have here, there was our guy in the same era, Vic Fangio.
Do your research.
Who gave us a lot of clips too, because
Now, one specifically was an exchange with JJ, right? JJ Stankovitz,
I believe so.
the
Yeah.
former NBC sports reporter, now the PA announcer for the Colts. There was a back and forth with them, but Vic, like the side story of that, is that Vic actually emailed JJ later and apologized because JJ was actually right on something, wasn't it? Isn't that part of the side story?
Yeah, so he's basically saying that whatever, and I don't have the whole clip, unfortunately, but whatever JJ brought forth, he was basically saying, do your research, you're wrong. And then it turned out JJ was actually right.
And Vic went back to him.
Whatever. It gave us this.
Do your research.
Which we use forever whenever, one of us 10 times an episode doesn't have our facts right.
Do your research.
I think that one of the most interesting sidebars of that whole Fox era is when Fox is just like Vic Fangio at that point is like winning everybody over. At the same point, John Fox is basically being fired every week by the media, fans. At the same time, Vic was, strengthening his own head coach credentials and doing his best to endear himself to the media.
Yeah, which he finally got that opportunity. And I still think if the Broncos had had a better quarterback while he was there, they would have had a lot more success. And one of the side stories, I'm sure we'll talk about at some point this season, is him going to Miami and what the Dolphins can be with Vic Fangio now running that defense.
Oh boy.
But it was fun having Vic around. He was so blunt. He was so honest. He was, he would just call it how it was.
I'd like to see him get his hands on more balls.
And he gave us a lot of sound bites too along the way, which was good. Another one.
Wait, hold on. Which player was that in reference to? Adrian Amos.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I'd like to see him get his hands on more balls. Probably not.
That's how it was. All right. Another player from that era that we miss for the sound bites. Our guy, Pernell McPhee.
All right, so 2 words, Aaron Rodgers.
Hall of Fame. 2 words.
It's one of my favorite exchanges.
Becky Kaczynski.
With Pernell McPhee. Hall of Fame, 2 words. Of course, that's 3. And then you've heard this one a bunch. This was actually from when he went back to the Ravens, though.
Y'all stay corona free, all right? And God bless.
Just that laugh was so good all the time.
One of my favorite exchanges with Pernell McPhee is, I think it's probably the same conversation when we were talking about Aaron Rodgers. I believe that would be the first matchup that Pernell McPhee had against the Packers. And I think it could have been Peggy. She was with NBC Channel 5 at that time, was asking, like, how do you stop him? And his reply was just hit his ass. Hit his ass. Like that's all he would say. Hit his ass multiple times. And I loved it. Like, I love the interactions with Pernell McPhee. Even like off camera, off recording, like you could talk to him about football, about a lot of things. One of my favorite players to cover that the Bears have had during this, whatever you want to call it, since we've been covering the team since Lovie Smith, but one of my favorite players to cover.
There was one more. I think I have it. Yes. Do you remember what Pernell McPhee called Mitch Trubisky?
Oh, yeah.
And I think after this happened, I don't really know the whole story, but I feel like there was some pushback that they didn't like that he called him this. But here's the exchange on this one from Pernell McPhee on Mitch Trubisky.
What are your impressions of Trubisky?
The pretty boy assassin. I love the pretty boy assassin. That's my boy. He's real calm. He real posed. He young. He got his growing pains, but I love the pretty boy assassin.
Is that a new nickname, or has that been around for a while?
Flo, what Flo at? Flo gave it to him. We kind of, hey, what we call Mitch? Pretty boy what? Pretty boy assassin. That's his new nickname. That's what we call him.
So Flo would be Leonard Floyd.
Yes.
And that was the year. So that was 2017, right? When Mitch was
so
a
that
rookie.
was Mitch's rookie year.
So he wasn't starting at that time. They had Mike Glennon, as everybody can remember or refuses to remember, and they had Mark Sanchez. Those were the Bears' number 1 and number 2 quarterbacks. So Mitch was the 3rd-string quarterback going against Leonard Floyd, going against Pernell McPhee in practice. And you were like one of the first ones to call it out right away. Oh, number 10 is better than both of these guys.
Yes.
And you could see it against the starters. And now Mitch's career didn't pan out here for a variety of reasons, but
that was still accurate at the time. That Mitch was clearly the best quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Better arm.
Which speaks to how
can move, better athlete.
Yeah. How screwed they were at the position.
Now, we didn't know that at the time. We just thought he was, you saw a more talented player than 2 veterans.
Yeah. So I guess they called him Pretty Boy Assassin. Did you ever hear that behind the scenes that like they didn't actually like that they called him that?
Sure.
Yeah. And then they're like, don't say that anymore out loud. Because I think that was the only time it ever came out.
I think it continued like that week for a little bit.
Yeah.
Of course, Pat Finley has to get his stories on it and stuff like that, asking
sure
around the locker room. But yeah, I do recall it kind of not lasting long, at least the conversation about the Pretty Boy Assassin. But we should also remember that by week 5, Mike Glennon was benched and Mitch Trubisky was in.
Yes. That was an interesting time because Mitch was essentially the third string quarterback, but obviously he was what it was as I don't know about as big, but pretty much close to as big as when they drafted Fields. And it's everyone wants to hear from the first round quarterback, but they weren't necessarily making him available that much because he was the third stringer. So we had to kind of ask around, his teammates to get the quotes on Mitch and what they thought of him. So
He was available like once a week in the corner of the locker room, where quarterbacks usually go to the lectern or podium, what have you, and it was different. One of the many interesting circumstances of covering this football team.
Well, and everyone was there, so like you had the whole thing took up like 4 or 5 lockers at a time. And yeah. So speaking of Mitch, he loved you.
You love the interception questions, like I was counting you for that.
Well, that was to me, right?
That was to you. Which was always, it amused me because it's not like, certainly on the list of people who are hard on Mitch, I'm not sure you're at the top of the list, but
Yeah,
you did have a habit. You did have a habit of asking the questions.
No one else would do it.
when you throw interceptions, and eventually Mitch caught on.
You love the interception questions, like I was counting you for that.
No one else would do it. Oh, memories.
Yes.
Memories.
There's some good ones here. Do you remember when Eddie Jackson was drafted?
Go on.
Well, he had remember the big storyline and why he dropped to the 4th round was because of the surgery he had on his leg and the permanent rod that had to be put in his leg, which drew some questions from members of the media.
I forgot about this one.
Yeah.
This is a classic one. If you're a relatively new listener, you're going to enjoy this one.
Yeah. So Lauren Majera, who used to work at WGN TV, she wanted to know the specifics on this rod.
How big is the rod?
I'm not sure how thick it is, but I think it's probably kind of thick.
You gonna play the Josh Sitton one? Is our elementary
we got that one
grammar
coming
school
too.
locker room humor comes out for a little bit?
Well, we are definitely known for some of this on the show, and proud of it. Can we listen to that one more time? Because first of all, the question was how big is the rod, and then he answered it with how thick it was. And I still to this day, like if you just listen to Eddie Jackson, I think he leans into it a little bit.
Oh, he was laughing,
right?
I that was actually in the media center of Hallis Hall. And gosh, the memory's working today. It must be the coffee. And there was this big smile on his face.
Yeah.
When he was answering the question, and maybe a little giggle after.
How big is the rod?
I'm not sure how thick it is, but I think it's probably kind of thick.
Yeah. It's so good. Also gives you perspective how long Eddie Jackson's been around now. Good for him. And obviously one of the big leaders on this team as we go into the 2023 season. The one that John's just brought up, though, is we go back to Bourbonnais now when Josh Sitton, which I always had to be careful with that name. If I don't slow that one down, Josh Sitton, it gets a little dicey. But they were talking about how the linemen they had a smoker there, I guess, and they were smoking meat all the time. And our good friend Stacey Dales, who's been on the show many, many times, wanted to know this.
Josh, who's the best meat smoker of your offensive line?
What do you mean by meat smoker?
So no, play that again.
Yeah,
the best part's not even his response. It's the laugh from our friend Patrick Finley.
Yes,
into the mic.
This is definitely one of those bites you got to play a few times to truly appreciate. But the very serious question, by the way, from Stacy, who's the best meat smoker on the team? And then the giggle in the middle is Pat Finley, our good friend Pat Finley, who just happened to be right next to the microphone.
Josh, who's the best meat smoker of your offensive line?
What do you mean by meat smoker?
And then there's the dry response. What do you mean by meat smoker?
Oh man, that's classic. Pat's laugh there gets me every time.
It's so good. It's so good. That's one of the best memories. So yeah, those are some of the.
And Stacy Dales, we love her, friend of the show, had a great sense of humor about all of it afterwards. I
Oh
remember
yeah,
that. I remember
Look,
all that.
If you
afterwards.
can't have fun, the
Covering
players
football,
too.
yes, yeah.
Like the play. Josh just being able to make that comment in front of a microphone too. If you can't have fun as we're grinding, especially when we're grinding through the days of training camp, then we're all just taking this way too seriously.
Those were the days that they started to change the access.
Yeah.
Right?
We were in that tent.
There was a tent that coming off the field by the players' entrance, which we were never around. In the Lovey Smith Tressman days, they created a tent. There was a podium, a lectern, and all that. And remember, they had like the cheap plastic chairs, set up in there. Then they had another tent next to it where there was just like randomly placed chairs next to each other for like the one-on-one interviews.
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I could go on and on about how things have changed over the years.
Your memory certainly hasn't waned on that one.
It's the coffee.
Yeah.
A little extra money helps everyone live their best lives, and Chime's online checking account is here to help you live yours. With Chime's online checking account, you can enjoy lots of perks like fee-free overdrafts up to $200. You can get paid up to 2 days early with direct deposit too. No more pesky overdraft fees and no impact on your credit score to apply. Plus, you have access to more than 60,000 fee-free ATMs. How about that? Signing up to Chime takes minutes, so join the millions of other Chime members and sign up today. Get started at chime.com/Adams. That's chime.com/Adams. One more time, that's chime.com/Adams. Chime is a financial technology company, not a bank. Banking services and debit card provided by the Bancorp Bank North America or Stride Bank North America. Members FDIC. Eligibility requirements and overdraft limits apply. Access to direct deposits up to 2 days early depends on the timing of the submission of the payment file from the payer. Out-of-network ATM withdrawal fees may apply.
These days, it can be a pain to figure out what to wear. You got work, you want to go out, you got to be at your kid's game, you really just want to be comfortable, right? Most of the time. And that's hard to juggle, but that's where Roan comes in. Men's closets were due for radical reinvention, and Roan stepped up to the challenge. Roan's commuter collection is the most comfortable, breathable, and flexible set of products known to man. And here's why. Because Roan helps you get ready for any occasion with the commuter collection, offering the world's most comfortable pants, dress shirts, quarter zips, and polos. You never have to worry about what to wear when you have the Roan commuter collection. The comfortable 4-way stretch fabric provides breathability and flexibility that leaves you free to enjoy what life throws your way, from your commute to work to even your 18 holes of golf. It's time to feel confident without the hassle with Roan's wrinkle release technology. Wrinkles disappear as you stretch and wear the products. It's that easy, and it's true. I have a Roan shirt I love, and if it's wrinkled at all, about 10 minutes later after I put it on, those wrinkles are gone. With Gold Fusion anti-odor technology, you'll be smelling fresh and clean all day long, and on top of that, Roan is 100% machine washable, so you can ditch the dry cleaner all together. These shirts are comfortable. The pants are comfortable. You can move around in them. You never feel like you're, in a tight position sitting and then you got to move your pants around. Everyone can relate to that. None of that with Roan. The commuter collection can get you through any workday and straight into whatever comes next. Head to roan.com/Adam. Use promo code Adam. You'll save 20% off your entire order. That's 20% off your entire order when you head to roan.com/Adam. That's RHONE.com/Adam. Use code Adam. It's time to find your corner office comfort. All right. And then there's our good friend.
Hello, everyone. This is Al Rivron.
Became a long-standing character on this show.
The dude literally sounded like a robot.
Hello, everyone. This is Al Rivron.
I mean, if that does not sound like a human robot, I don't know who is. What is? What? It would be an it, right?
So that comes from Al Riveron was the head of officiating, and I'm sure he's a nice guy. I don't know him, but there would be bad calls every week, which always happens. It's the NFL. But he would put these videos out, and he would only focus on the ones that they would defend. There was never a video. It was like, we screwed this one up. Like the NBA puts out their officiating report nightly, and they're like, yeah, this should have been a travel, and they missed it. It's like, and we're not even asking for that. It's just like when there's an egregious call, it was like the worst call of the week. They do a video on some other obscure call that happened, like this was pass interference, and this is why. And Al would start every video.
Hello, everyone. This is Al Rivron.
And then we, of course, got really ticked off when the Zach Miller play happened in New Orleans.
Worst call of like the decade.
Which was just a bad call to begin with on the field. Should have been a touchdown. They call it incomplete after a review when there was really no evidence in the video to overturn it. On top of it, Zach Miller suffers this horrific leg injury on the play, which we then find out 24 hours later was actually life-threatening. So it was just a crazy thing. And on top of that, they take the touchdown away. So everyone for days now is like, how could you reverse this? Such a bad call. He's in the hospital for over a week in New Orleans. George McCaskey's down there with him. He doesn't come back with the team. Like, there's all this drama going around. People are just happy that Zach's alive, quite frankly. And Al drops a video on like Wednesday, like, dude, read the room. And he's like, and he comes out and defends the call. And on top of it, literally points to his shadow in the video. Like anybody with eyes who looks at it, he's like, this is the football touching the ground. And there's no football. It's like a dark spot.
Yeah.
It's like a dark spot from the shadow from the lights coming
It was
down.
embarrassingly bad. The whole thing.
It was just one of those things where it's like, even if you like to your death believe that was the right call, like don't put that video out. Like, what are you doing? And it was our good guy Al.
Hello, everyone. This is Al Rivron.
So we
had robot Al.
We had fun with that forever. Where do you want to go next? Because we got a lot of stuff. One of my favorites is how we kind of became known for pointing out the names that would be wrong on the broadcasts, which still to this day, when we get one, like 5 people will tweet it at us in the middle of the game.
Yeah, please keep that going.
Which is helpful because we're not watching the game in a scenario where we can like really hear the broadcast or hear the mistakes as they happen. And I'm also sort of sensitive. This was always honestly just a moment of, transparency being a little cringy for me because like I have a lot of respect for the people that do play-by-play and analyst work on TV. And it's not easy. There's so many names you got to know. You're not around these teams every single week. Especially the TV announcers that are, in different cities every week calling different teams. They're going to screw up some names. But it goes back to the conversation we just had. You got to have some fun with it along the way.
If you're not having fun, you shouldn't be covering this sport or any other sport.
Yeah. So there's been a bunch. For some reason, Kyle Fuller's name became such a problem. And it was especially funny because it's just Kyle Fuller. It's not a hard name, but it was like almost every week.
Kendall Fuller is best when he's off and can break on the football. And Kendall Fuller delivering for the Bears defense.
Now that was because his brother was Kendall. And so that would mess things up a little bit. But there was one where he was called Kyler Filler, which I always enjoyed.
My favorite one was Kurt Fuller.
Kurt Fuller. Yeah, there was a Kurt Fuller. I don't know if I have that one saved.
I mean, personally, I don't know many Kurts.
Kurt. I mean, I have a friend named Kurt, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Stood up in my wedding. Lives in Arlington Heights.
I think I've met Kurt.
Yeah, you probably have. I don't know. Well, then you still don't know a Kurt. I don't know. There was one more recently I actually have here from this past season.
Good job by Equinemius St. John. He's going to get the block.
Equinemius St. John. Why not? So we've had some fun with that over the years. Let's see here. Do we go to the Nagy era already?
Nah, do it.
Because we got some good ones. Of course, from Matt Nagy. And
that's not cliche talk. That's real talk.
What question are you asking me?
Now I'm trying to find. I don't have it right here in front of me. The all-timer. But we know as I here it is.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack.
I mean, that's got to be on the list of like our top 5 ever.
See, my favorite thing about that is Matt Nagy actually knew it, and later, who asked him about that? Like just like off.
Oh yeah.
Like not off the record, but it was kind of just like part of that informal conversation, like before the press conference or after the press conference. It's probably Pat Finley.
I feel like he actually did an interview about it at some point, though.
About
like
talking about his.
Well, at some point there was an acknowledgement, I think, from the players, but also himself, that he does not say the word peanuts right.
Right. Because of his Pennsylvanian accent.
I mean, that's what he blamed it on.
He did. Yes. Good memory. Play that again real quick.
Because someone, and what maybe it was a player, somebody said that they were actually kind of bracing for this when they heard he was singing the national anthem, because they always knew that when he says the word peanuts, it sounds like this.
Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jack.
So like they were ready for it.
You know, like I really enjoyed covering Matt Nagy. Like over the first couple years, he was an open book. He was great with us. But then I think the pressure got to him. The whole Mitch Trubisky experience got to him. We know how that ended. That ended well on both sides. Check out our story on it in The Athletic. It's still out there somewhere. But yeah, things changed with Matt Nagy from the start to finish, as they seem to do with head coaches in their tenures here. But yeah, he showed a sense of humor with his rendition of the seventh inning stretch at Wrigley Field,
which thankfully, same thing. You got to have fun with this stuff and not take it too seriously. I'm going to try to stay in chronological order here, because this is where things start to go a little askew, right? After the 2019 season, and then 2020 goes really poorly, but they still make a playoff game. But it was just an ugly season. COVID, all the stuff. And of course, it led to one of the worst press conferences we've ever heard, that I think set the wheels in motion in hindsight for a lot of the change that we now have just a few years later, which includes, Kevin Warren being here and Ted Phillips in retirement, a bunch of stuff, new GM, new head coach. But 2 sound bites really stood out from the end of season press conference after 2020 that kind of summed everything up perfectly. And we certainly had to play them a lot afterwards.
Have we gotten the quarterback situation completely right? No. Have we won enough games? No. Everything else is there.
Ted Phillips. That one's going to stick for a long time, right? Like, it's kind of his last big soundbite that everyone's clinging to, and it's just part of the history, and not only of the team, but also the show. It just, at the time, was cringy. Of course, everyone else seemingly realizing not everything else is there at all, and they went ahead in 2021, and things just kind of got worse.
I think we haven't won enough under the leadership of George McCaskey, and that's what we're working on.
That was also from that same press conference. But if you just even fast forward, a few months, they end up with Justin Fields, which is great. But then a few months after that, they're not even getting him starter reps. And one of the two of us on this show lost their mind.
What a waste of time training camp was, guys. Like, looking back at that 2020 season, like, Matt Nagy had a great first year. Second year wasn't good. Makes the playoffs in that just very different 2020 year. But I felt like the weight of expectations just brought that whole organization down. They didn't, like, in most cases, like covering this team, making the playoffs in 2 out of 3 seasons, it's at least some level of, okay, we're on the right path. Like something's working here. But that whole press conference over Zoom, the whole mood of it was just depressing.
Yeah.
I think it's rooted in, well, at that point, the Bears had clearly given up on Trubisky. Like, they got something wrong. This huge swing at the fences was missed. The head coach was giving up on him. And the GM was going to give up on him, too. Like, that whole weight of missed opportunity, expectations that weren't met, like, you could just feel it. But in most cases, making the playoffs, albeit as the extra 7th seed in 1 year, for this organization, for elite, like they would be okay with that. But like something changed that year. Did it not? Didn't you just have that feeling in 2020? That season?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's when, I mean, a lot of the things have been reported in hindsight, in by all of us, but especially in some of the deep dives that you did and other outlets did, where we heard more of these stories about, like, for example, what really happened with Kyle Long after that London game, on the way home, and
Trubisky being ignored.
Yes, Trubisky just being completely ignored after. Well, that was after the 2020 season, right? Or
during it. Yeah. 2020 was the Nick Foles run of things.
Yeah. And just not even going to his exit meeting, right? Like, I think what happened in 2020 was those cracks started to spread the foundation of whatever Matt Nagy had built up, which I do think was real in the beginning. In 18, I think there were a lot of good things that were headed on the right track. So I think and then just the problem with that press conference was it was so tone deaf. And one of the issues that I had was just there actually were things that you could credit Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace with as like concrete reasons why you were going to give them one more year. But they didn't really do that.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah.
They just gave a lot of non-answers and silly statements like that one.
Have we gotten the quarterback situation completely right? No. Have we won enough games? No. Everything else is there.
Which brings us to actually little inside production here on the show. I asked Kent, our producer, if he could throw an old open on the start of this. So maybe by the time you're listening, you've already heard this, but that led to one of my favorite opens we ever did, which was the Hurt open from Johnny Cash. So that would be perfect to throw on this podcast if it hasn't already, because that was from that day. And it just I remember so many of our listeners just loving that was just like the perfect way to open that episode.
It was fantastic. It fit perfectly. Isn't that the day they used collaboration like 1,000 times as well? Or some version of collaborate or collaboration, or
maybe that was Pace and Nagy together. I don't know. I think that was earlier. But by the time we got to training camp and saw the way that Fields was going to be used after they really, quite frankly, lucked into getting him. Although you do give him credit for jumping up and pulling the trigger and pulling
I never viewed it as luck because they were prepared for it. But what they weren't prepared for was like they didn't have a plan to develop him.
Yeah, unfortunately.
That's not cliche talk. That's real talk.
So, but then there's our awesome listeners too that have contributed so many great sound bites with our voicemails over the years.
Anyway, who cares?
Classic.
Especially Bob.
Point is, those are some numbers.
There it is. I was waiting for that one. I was waiting for you to hit that one. With all due respect, with all due respect to our friend Bob, I don't think anything's going to top that.
We had some
At
good
all.
rants on the voicemail
God, who
line
was
over
the
the years.
cornerback? Oh man, now my memory is failing me. Who was the cornerback that was struggling?
Duke Shelley.
Was it Duke Shelley and
Well, I think that was from when
Kendall Vildor?
I think it was from when Kendall Vildor and Duke Shelley were like on the field together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kent's confirming it was Vildor.
Yeah. Was probably not going to be starting this year, but still be on the team. That was good.
Can you hit it one more time for me?
Oh, yeah. You love that one.
I love the passion of it.
Yeah. I think we got through all the ones that I had pulled. I mean, there's still plenty of good ones. Chuck Pagano.
The philosophy is a kill philosophy. Keep it likable and learnable. So that's an acronym for not, you know what I'm talking about. Keep it likable and learnable.
What about Brock Olivo?
Do you want that stuff?
Yeah.
Because I can pull it here. I had it. I was looking at it earlier, and I was like, there's not gonna be enough time. Do people even remember Brock Olivo? But it was pretty good. If you give me just like a minute here to stall, I was looking at it earlier.
There are more here. There's Dow Loggins talking about expanding packages.
Mm-hmm.
There is the Brock Olivo Kill It acronym. There is Chuck Pagano about staying on the grass. It's good to be back on the grass. We could go on with John Fox, but we already hit on him. Trying to think of some
I
other
have
ones.
one of the ones you mentioned.
You know, we're trying to expand his package.
Has he struggled with expanding his package?
We'll exchange between Dow Loggins and JJ Stankovitz. All right. I know our guy Chris Elba doesn't love that we would play this, but this is part of the podcast. So we gotta go back in time, and then maybe we'll retire and never play it again. Chris, we promise. But this is one of my favorite of all time.
Chris, Matt Nagy's always been kind of the past half full kind of guy.
One of my we're also forgetting Juan Castillo.
Yes, an ass full, half full kind of guy instead of a glass half full. That's so good. Good slip of the tongue there. Yeah, there was. I don't know if I have the Juan Castillo stuff.
The you're not listening, Chris.
You're not listening, Chris. Oh, here it is.
You're not listening, Chris.
And then Juan, this I know we can talk about because Chris talks about it all the time. Juan had I think he turned it into a bit eventually, but Juan Castillo always wanted to relate what he did for a living to what we did. And there's just the comparisons were just not, they just didn't add up. There was just not, they weren't the same. And then he would always be like, Chris, do you have kids? And be like, no. And then 2 weeks later, Chris, do you have any kids? And I think at first he didn't realize that he was constantly asking this poor guy if he had kids all the time. But then I think he did realize it, and then he just kept doing it.
Yeah. Mark Potash. They had parenting conversation.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So that was good. I was trying to I was having all kinds of problems earlier today with trying to get some of the stuff to load. So that was part of the problem. I do have this Brock Olivo stuff here if I can get it to load. Brock Olivo was the assistant special teams coordinator
under Jeff Rogers.
That's right.
For a year only, right?
But before that, he was the
2
Broncos.
years.
He was the Broncos special teams coordinator. And he went viral in his press conference for all these mottos he had and all this stuff. But it actually was similar to the Chuck Pagano kill philosophy.
We're going to be simple. We're going to play fast. We're going to play hard. We're going to kill it, okay? This is a great acronym, you guys, right? Kill it. Keep it likable and learnable.
It's the same acronym.
Yeah.
We're going to kill it. Where's this other one? Here we go.
Our motto, and it's going to be on my office, is going to be cut it loose and have fun. That's what we're going to do.
Cut it loose and have fun. That's not a motto. That's
Can't be.
Our motto, and it's going to be on my office, is going to be cut it loose and have fun. That's what we're going to do.
It's going to be on the office. Cut it loose and have fun. He didn't he like go to Italy?
I just looked him up. He went from being the Bears special teams assistant to being like the head coach of Italy for a year. Or a coach at Italy. I don't know. He was in Italy. And then he's had a couple of runs in different capacities for some colleges.
All right, here's one more. I think this was when he was actually with the Broncos.
Good afternoon, folks. Brock Olivo, special teams coordinator. I want to thank Vance Joseph for not only the 6-hour grueling interview to test my fortitude and whatnot knowledge.
Brock, using your words, the 6-hour grilling, what was the toughest question you got?
Toughest question I got was about a lasagna dish that my wife makes. She's Sicilian, and so Coach was really no. And look, man, we're going to be simple. We're going to play fast. We're going to play hard. We're going to kill it. Okay, this is a great acronym, you guys. Right? Kill it. Keep it likable and learnable. We're going to turn our guys loose. And really, our motto, and it's going to be on my office, is going to be cut it loose and have fun. That's what we're going to do. Well, I'm going to teach the guys some Italian. And
the same answer.
There's going to be no shortage of pastries.
I don't think I've heard the full thing.
It's a niche. And I sold it to my teammates, and I've sold it to my players like this. Look, man, how cool is it? Okay, when everyone else is shunning special teams and putting it on the back burner, how cool are you if you're different and you make it a priority? How cool is that, man?
How cool is that, man? That was a montage from like a bunch of different answers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no. I was just like, this is going to be pastries? Ask me about my wife's lasagna. So good. All right.
That was fun. I'm trying to remember if there's anyone we left out.
Oh, I'm sure there is. There's so much.
Where's our friend Patrick Finley?
That's from the NFL owners meetings a few years ago.
Yep. I mean, there's some other. There's been fun with my name. And other shows around the country getting it wrong.
Yeah, hit that one.
Which we've had a lot of fun with.
One of the local writers, Adam Hoge or Hogg, excuse me, I don't know how to pronounce the last name.
That was Dan Orlovsky. This happened on the Pat McAfee show once.
Pool reporter Adam Hoge.
Hoge.
His interview with referee Tony Correnti.
That's a good one.
And then Nick Wright, who should know my last name.
His quote, courtesy of Adam Hoge.
That was after the game in Pittsburgh a couple of years ago when
is that the Cassius Marsh?
The Cassius Marsh.
Wasn't that Soldier Field? That was Soldier Field.
No, it was in Pittsburgh.
It was Pittsburgh?
Yeah, it was the Monday Night Football game. Fields actually had that Fields actually played really well in that game. And there were 3 calls in that game that were controversial.
Yes.
And then
the ref literally turned into Cassius Marsh coming off the field.
Yep. And they flagged him and then he flagged him for taunting.
Yeah.
Which he literally got up and celebrated a huge play. And I forget if it was a TFL or a sack on 3rd down. And he got up and just like celebrated like anybody would celebrate a sack, but he just happened to be facing the Steelers bench. And then, but if Tony Correnti didn't throw the flag right away, it wasn't until they like bumped into each other. Then he throws the flag. And then I ended up being the one that did the pool report interview with Tony Correnti afterwards, which is why it was a big story. Like the next day, it was Monday Night Football. And then, so the next day was all the morning sports shows around the country were talking about it, and they were all referencing that interview, and no one got my name right, which is fine because it gave us a bunch of content for this podcast, which is what we're here for.
That's what we need.
So I'm grateful that they screwed that up. Just like I wish I still had the Les Grobstein cut calling me Adam Hogg, because he would do that regularly. All right, well, this is fun. Great idea. This is from our listeners that requested this. So happy we were able to put it together. Hope people enjoyed it.
Yeah, and I'm sure we're forgetting some. Reach out to us on Twitter. Maybe we'll play them in the next episode, because we are coming back next week.
Yeah.
For one more show, and then we're really into it with training camp. Then we're really busy.
Yeah, next week's show will be more football-y. We'll, of course, talk storylines going into camp and everything to expect. We do have the schedule for camp. We got our media notice of how everything's going to work. It sounds mostly like how it was last year. And it's going to be fun. Johns and I, right before the show, were talking about how we're almost getting to the point where we're burned out from not working.
It's true.
If that makes sense. Because there's a lot of kids and stuff, and still not a lot of sleep.
I need to see some football.
Yes. But that's why we do this. We take our break, we go to our family until we get sick of them, and then we want football back.
Exactly. like truthfully, like the break from football is not that rejuvenating. What it is for me, if I'm being honest, it's like the first few days of pads. Like, you could actually smell it, the grass, the sounds. Like, that's what gets me going.
You can smell the pads.
Yes. Well, that's smelly sweat, but it's, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The grass, it's the sounds. It's everything about training camp that gets the blood flowing, gets the ideas rolling again. You get to see football as well.
Well, speaking of football, for those craving more football talk, we really encourage you between now and the next episode next week that we'll have for you to check out the Play Callers, an awesome new podcast out from The Athletic. Jordan Rodrigue, a lot of great interviews. I have not quite had a chance to listen to all of this yet. I will once I get back to my commuting lifestyle and I'm listening to a ton of podcasts. But it's already saved on Spotify for me, where I listen, and can't wait to listen to a lot of great interviews, inside story of some of the coaching, and Sean McVay and Kyle Shanahan, and all this stuff came together. So if you like football, definitely check it out. Play Callers, courtesy of The Athletic. That's going to do it for us. So I'm going to go back on vacation now for a week, and then we'll be back next week.
I'm going to go find a kid to scold.
Oh. Just out of habit.
Yeah.
It's been an hour. I haven't yelled at a kid in an hour. I need to go get it out of my system.
Yeah, so they're at camps right now. So this is like my break in between being a taxi cab. as I run kids back and forth between their activities.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about this. We've both doubled the amount of kids that we have since we started this podcast 8 years ago.
We have.
For me, though, it's simple addition. It's just 1 + 1. For you, you need like calculus to figure out how many you actually
just
have.
Simple multiplication. 2 times 2 equals 4.
Yes. So, but yeah. Well, enjoy being in a free Uber who doesn't get paid or tipped.
Usually it ends up costing me more money, because they keep asking for like food stops. And at this point, sometimes just picking up drive-through is easier.
Yeah. Oh, I can definitely relate with that. And again, get ready. Please put it on your calendar. July 24th, Monday, July 24th. It's the day before the Bears report to training camp. It'll be our kickoff to training camp show live at the Obvious Shirts store in Wrigleyville. Come hang out with us. We haven't had a live show in a long time. We're going to have fun there.
What time again? Tell everybody.
It's at 6.
6 p.m. Not a.m. I wouldn't make that.
No, it's at 6, and I'm excited and willing to maybe even throw out the idea of going to a different establishment after the show nearby. I hear Wrigleyville.
I was literally just thinking that.
Yeah, Wrigleyville has some of those, I've heard. So perhaps we'll coordinate that too and have some bonus time for those that come out to Obvious Shirts. You'll be able to pick up some merch, hang out, and of course, if anybody who's followed Obvious Shirts, they got plenty more than just Hoge Jahns stuff that'll be there. And so many of their good shirts and products and We have some, I can't reveal everything, but we've been talking to them and we have some new items coming out that we're really excited about. So all of that you'll hear about in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll all be ready and at the store that day. But if not, it'll also be available to order in the near future. So, all right, fun episode today. We'll be back next week. We're not going on any more long hiatuses, but it will just be one episode this week, one episode next week, and then we're back like we normally are, going full go for the rest of the football season. Can't wait for that. And hopefully we'll see you at Obvious Shirts on July 24th. Talk to you next week.
See ya.